Lots of people ask why I decided to wear the things I wore on trail. The biggest one, of course, being the fact that I wore sandals on the trail. And I guess that started on the PCT where I was carrying sandals for camp shoes and I just started wearing them more and more and more. And then my shoes died and I ended up throwing my shoes out and my sandals were the only footwear I had. And so I was wearing them all the time and I just really, really liked it. And so I wanted to keep wearing sandals. And so that's where I started wearing sandals. Then I went back to New Zealand and tried hiking in sandals there, and I found them too slippery. And I thought that the conditions I was dealing with in New Zealand were similar to that I would be in the AT. And so I switched the type of sandals to try and find that was a bit grippier. And once I sorted that out, I thought I was just like set to be able to keep wearing sandals all the time. I like my feet being open to the air. I like having no arch support and that sort of thing. It's kind of almost counterintuitive compared to what everybody else wants to do. My feet are happy. I'm happiest in no shoes at all, but no shoes on trail isn't really practical, so I guess sandals is the least amount of shoes I could get away with. I did switch from wearing sandals to shoes for about a 100-mile stretch between the NOC and Hot Springs pretty early on. And I did this because I was getting cracks on my heels and I wasn't really sure how to deal with them. So I just popped on a pair of shoes to allow them some time to heal up. Almost instantly I didn't like wearing the shoes, but because I posted my sandals ahead, I had to wait until I got back to them to be able to switch back. And then I found other ways of dealing with cracks through taping and things like that, which made me happy because I was still able to have the free feeling of being in sandals, but without having to get such bad cracking on my feet.
I started out with the Lone Peak 4, which I had been training in prior to starting on the trail. So by the time that we were a few hundred miles in, the Lone Peaks were starting to break down and I was getting heel problems and some ankle problems. So I started looking for something with a little more heel cushion and support for my ankle. What I ended up with was a Timp 1.5, which ended up being the best thing that I could find the whole trail. I also, for a short period in the Shenandoahs, tried an Olympus 3.0 because it had more cushion, and my thought was more cushion was better, but that turned out to not be true. The shoe doesn't really flex very much, so over rocks and things like that, my foot wasn't moving the way, it wasn't moving very naturally, and so that ended up making like the whole bottom of my foot ache. And so I only stuck with that shoe for about 3 days, and I sent that back and got a new Timp 1.5. A decent number of people that we talked to on trail switched their shoes around Pennsylvania when the rocks started getting bad. And they went from trail runners, like I was wearing, usually to either a Keen or a boot. So like a half boot, half shoe type situation was what most people ended up doing.
Something with a more rigid sole to try and stop
Right.
the rocks from jabbing into the bottom of their feet.
Which might have been a good idea, I guess, if you were just going out to hike rocks to use a shoe like that. But having walked over 1,000 miles at that point in something else and then switching cold turkey like that ended up giving almost everybody we talked to who did that some kind of problems. If it, at least blisters, sometimes heel and ankle issues.
Yeah.
One of the things that I experienced on trail that I think would have been good information for anybody that did want to change shoes around Pennsylvania is if you're going with a heavier, more structured boot or like a Keen or something like that, usually what I do is do 2 pairs of socks. So a sock liner inside of a wool sock or an Injinji inside of a wool sock usually helps prevent blisters because then all the friction is between the 2 pairs of socks rather than on your foot. For the Appalachian Trail, I had stopped wearing boots by that time and started off in a darn tough wool sock and got a few blisters early on from just wearing that one sock. And when I decided to switch away from wool socks, I tried to switch into Injinjis, which Chile was using. And I started off with an Injinji lightweight as a sock liner to the Darn Tough wool sock, which was just a bit too thick inside of a trail runner. And I eventually found a crew cut midweight Injinji, which was enough sock to just wear by itself and gave me padding or cushion between my toes, which is where I was getting blisters. And then I used that the rest of the trail, and that ended up to be the best situation for me.
Yeah, for me, when I do wear shoes, I'd wear the Injinji socks. And that's because I started out on the PCT in Darn Toughs, and I found that I was getting blisters on the undersides of my toes. I think from trying to like curl my feet up to get grip within my shoe. And switching to the Injinjis meant that there was, all the sock covering all of my toes, which stopped those blisters. And once I switched to Injinji socks, I've never wanted to go back to any other sort of sock. And so when you were having troubles near the start, it was at the NOC, or at the very beginning, and we said, well, let's see if we can find some there, and they had them in store. So that was when you were able to make that switch.
Right. Most of the stores we found actually just carry the lightweight Injinji in the crew length, and then the medium weight Injinji that I ended up using, the stores were only carrying in the knee length. So I had to find the crew length medium weight Injinji online, which was better for temperature, and it was the right weight to wear by itself in a trail runner. One of the most notable pieces of clothing that I wore for the whole trail were tights. I actually started off in a long one-piece bodysuit, which ended up being a little too hot, but I wanted to keep the tights even after I got rid of the one piece, mostly due to bugs, but also because of thorns, briars, and other things that would brush against my legs. So I ended up wearing a lightweight Columbia brand tight through the whole trail to keep the bugs off of me.
For me, I started out in shorts, and at home I will hike in shorts, regardless of the weather or the terrain, even if that means, getting my legs cut up by thorns and gorse and things, because I just don't like to have my legs covered. And I ripped my shorts really early on, right across the back where my pack and my lower back, where the shorts met. I just kind of ripped the whole way across that seam and stitched it up by hand a couple of times and really needed something new. And it wasn't until trail days where I'd actually ordered some new shorts online and they didn't fit, and I bought a Purple Rain adventure skirt, and so I left trail days wearing the skirt, which was good. I quite liked it. It was quite new and weird for me to be wearing a skirt on trail, but within a week of leaving trail days in the skirt, we got really into the buggy territory, and I got absolutely massacred by no-see-ums over about a 2-day period, to the point where I was itching my legs in my sleeping bag at night while I was asleep and waking up with bloody scabs. And so next time we got to town, I bought a pair of long tights, which were permethrin treated, to help me deal with the bugs. And I wore them all the way through until the Vermont border, where I decided that ticks were no longer an issue. And I didn't care at that point what the bugs were doing. I wanted to be out of my tights. I found them really hot and uncomfortable and sweaty, and didn't understand how Raiden could be wearing tights all the time perfectly happily where I was miserable in them. But they protected me from the bugs for a long time, and so that was why I kept wearing them. Both of us used Fanny Packs for much of the trail. I started the trail with my fanny pack, and
she talked me into wearing a fanny pack within the first 2 weeks, probably.
No, you bought a fanny pack at Neil's Gap on day 3.
That's right.
We had known each other for 2 days, and you were like, yes, I need a fanny pack too.
It's a very convincing argument.
I originally, the previous pack I had really big hip belt pockets. I had a litre on each hip. And the Kumo has much smaller hip belt pockets, and so with that I decided that I wanted to have the fanny pack to be able to have lots of stuff handy all the time. And yeah, so I bought one and I played around with it a bit at home and then took it out on the AT, and it's great to have your phone, your headphones. I'd have my toothpaste and toothbrush, and then between my fanny pack and my hip belt pockets, I was able to put pretty much every snack I wanted to eat for the whole day right there, which meant you could eat and walk at the same time. Didn't have to sit down and take my pack off and open it up to get out food and things like that, which was great. It's the way I like to travel.
My most notable piece of gear was probably my conical hat that I wore since the beginning of the trail. And I'd been wearing that hat for about 2 years prior to the trail. And I really settled on using that particular hat because it's good in both the rain and the sun, which are both issues on the Appalachian Trail. I like it for the rain because it's very open underneath the protection. Whereas with a hood, you feel very closed in, at least I do, with the sides and the top being tight against your face. Whereas the conical in the rain, it's very open. You get wind up and under the hat between your head. And so it just feels less enclosed during the rain. And that, to me, makes the rainstorms more enjoyable rather than oppressive. And the other issue that I have is very fair skin. And when we were not inside the green tunnel, I would very easily get sunburned. And so other than putting sunscreen all over all the time, I could often just pop on the hat and it would cover not only my head and neck, but all the way out on my shoulders and everything. So it's a bit odd looking, obviously, but it's a nice hat for both of those things.
I guess in comparison, I started out the trail carrying a baseball cap, and I carried that for the first little while, more for the rain than the sun. I'd wear it underneath my hood on my jacket to just protect my face from the rain and stop my hood coming down over my eyes. I got rid of it somewhere, I'm not really sure where. I hadn't really been wearing it very much, and it was just a soggy hat that sat in the front pouch of my bag. I ended up just not using my hood or the hat a lot in the rain and just letting my head get wet. And then later on, I bought a visor in a Walmart somewhere. I don't remember where. And I probably only used it a handful of times on the rest of the trail. For me, I guess I've got the opposite skin tone. I don't burn very easily. And I find, especially coming from New Zealand, that the sun on the Appalachian Trail just didn't feel very harsh. Most people that we met on trail were carrying some sort of hat. A lot of people use some sort of outdoor gear, sort of round hat, wide-brimmed. Also, baseball cap sort of style was very, very popular. Mm-hmm. But with the green tunnel and the amount of rain, sun protection isn't, I guess, the biggest issue on the Appalachian Trail. If you're interested in what we were carrying in our packs, I'll put the lighter pack links in the description below. I also made a gear video after finishing the AT, and so you can check that out if you want more details about what was in my pack.